Login accepted.
Can you hear me? Okay, welcome everyone. It's very nice to see you and we're happy to be here. So first of all, I need to say that I'm really happy to see so many faces and I think people are still getting around. I'm sad that we're competing with the flow metrics that are on the stage one because it's a great extension to the team topologies book. If you didn't heard about it, I strongly recommend that. So before we dive into speaking about our guest today, I wanted to tell you a few words about our panel today. So when I was writing to Grzesiek, the creator of this conference, about this panel several months ago, I felt a bit AI hangover. I've seen many companies failing to deliver value with it. If the project was already on production, it was actually improving the situation by 5%. Which is not a success, it's still a failure. Sometimes you can improve that, but sometimes you can't. So I wanted to schedule a panel which would talk how to avoid those kind of situations. But thankfully, the situation is turning around. I've talked with many companies on this event, even in the booth, and everyone seems to have get better. Think about better scenarios, how to introduce AI into their products, and that's great. This year will be different. But anyway, AI is tough. It's very hard on explainability, very hard to think about the adoption scenarios, and today we will talk about how to use some lessons that our great guests have already learned. So maybe before we'll start, I want to ask you some questions, and you can just raise your hand. So who today is in the software engineering role? Just developing code, writing code? Okay, more than half. And who of you is taking care of the process? Working on the requirements, Scrum Master? Okay. So before we will start, I also wanted to show you this QR code right there. You can just scan it, and we'll also try to do this a bit more live. So we have our idea for this discussion panel, but you can actually go there and raise your question, and you can also vote for other questions. And those top questions will be answered today with our guest. But if you're not working with AI, the key takeaways which we want to give will be probably that AI is not magic. And you need to think 100 times harder to deliver something tangible. And the best ideas that can be used for AI are already in your backlog. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce our guest. So let's start with Irek. Irek is our Allegro expert who actually owns most of the machine learning and AI features at Allegro. This order is made by saying yes to the panel, so it's really random. So Irek has a lot of experience with working, setting up new technologies, doing machine learning features recommendations. So that's a great value in the discussion panel. Plus, Irek is also able to tell us some stories about how to evolve with technologies, because Allegro was created way before. So his voice is like a voice of wisdom, how to actually incorporate new technologies. Then we have Basia. Basia is ex-Synerise AI director and also starting her own company right now. This is a very valuable perspective when it comes to creating actual AI products and helping other companies using that, like a top one in Poland. Then Kuba. Kuba is also a very interesting character. So besides working on commercial stuff with KP Labs, where they send some satellites into the space, getting some data, he's also associate professor at Silesian University. So this is also like a very valuable perspective, because probably most of us can see that AI, ML, and data are a bit different than usual software development. We have a lot of PhDs, a lot of researchers trying to think how we can leverage those technologies up to their potential. And last but not least, Mervi, latest addition to the ZenDesk portfolio. So Mervi is AI and data head at Klaus, which was recently acquired by ZenDesk because Mervy did so well. So Klaus, currently part of ZenDesk, is like a QA automation tool, which I guess is also a very good use case because the more code and stuff we generate, the more we will need quality assurance. So let's start with that, and maybe a good warm-up would be to discuss what would be the best fundament to build a tangible AI solution. Jurek, do you want to start with that? Because I guess your journey was also really long on.
Sure. So I wouldn't say that there's a one fundamental thing. There's probably few, and the first one would be to have a good application in mind, because definitely you cannot really create tangible value if you just want to use cool new technologies. You need to have a real use case, and you need to have some good understanding where AI or machine learning component fits into that specific use case. So what specifically will be on the input to the model, what will be on the output from the model, how you will be using the inference of the machine learning model. Obviously, you need to create a model that actually works, but then there's more and more models that work quite good as the technology is getting better and better. But then obviously you need to have the right team and the right expertise. And when we were starting up with more advanced use cases of machine learning and AI at Allegro, the first thing that I realized that we need to do is that we need to build a research team, because simply the classical skill set of software engineers was not up to the task at the time. Right now there's more and more possibilities to use, for example, Gen AI or APIs, which sort of lowers the barrier of entry. But for sure, for more advanced use cases, and definitely for use cases in the past, the right skill set was absolutely fundamental. So yeah, two things: the right use case and the right skill set.
Okay.
I can actually continue from here. Like, I absolutely 100% agree that the use case is more important, the most important thing. I always say that you don't have to solve, like you have to solve the pain, not build an AI feature. If you go like, I want to build a feature, then what does it do? And actually in the classical triangle of product engineering design, AI doesn't really fit very well, or it's kind of always awkward. What I've seen that works very well is that data scientists should be a little bit like product managers, because they can figure out that this is a problem and it can be solved. Like I always tell this story that whenever people talk about NLP, they talk about sentiment analysis. And our customers, we've had customers that come that they say that we'll only join if you build sentiment analysis in 5 languages, and then they don't use it. So we listen to the customers and what they actually want to do, and we build a thing that finds complex conversations in help desk. And even though it's not something that people ask, it's used by 3 times as the customers that use sentiment analysis. So it's, you know, if you go and ask customers what you want, then the listener has to be someone who knows how to adapt.
Just one sentence, fully agree. The best use cases and the most valuable use cases I could probably attribute to bottom-up ideation.
Yeah, I was actually doing my own little research on this when I was at Synerise. With my friend Dominika Basaj, we were conducting our own initiative on finding out why AI products fail. And what we found out with great surprise was that there was actually, even if there was an in-house data science team in many companies, there was always very few interactions between the business team and the data science team. I only saw maybe one case when this interaction was day-to-day, so they met daily. But for others, when we were interviewing data scientists, we found out that they meet maybe once a quarter, once half a year. So if you don't meet, then nothing can happen, right? You cannot create anything together. Another very interesting takeaway was that the data scientists told us incredible stories. Like, we were so surprised because they told us things that could never, they were surely not reconciled with their business teams. So they told us, for example, why should I increase the performance of my model by 1 percentage point if my business team cannot go and use the predictions because they cannot convert the customers anyway? Like, they are converting 10% of the customers I give them. So why should I work on this model further?
Yeah, we're slowly diving into the problems, so we'll dive into there in a minute. But before that, I also wanted to close on the success stories. So, Kuba, I wanted to ask you a question: how we can measure actually if our AI product is doing good? Like, you're sending satellite to space, so I guess you're the competent person to answer that, right?
Right. Yeah. So perhaps I could add on the previous comments, because I pretty much agree on that. And in industry, it might happen that we actually have the real problem to solve using AI or using an algorithm, and AI might be the key for solving that. But there are actually use cases that are not well defined. For instance, if we send a satellite to space and if we equip the satellite with a sensor, then it might happen that we want to demonstrate the technology, right? So there might be quite an array of different use cases that might be tackled using Earth observation, but we might not even be aware of how we can use the data that we capture in orbit. And thinking about how to validate or just verify the algorithm is a big thing, because satellite is an extreme environment. So if we say that we send an AI model to a space, it should actually work. So we should expect that it might have chances to work. And on top of that, we know that we usually build AI on the data that we have, right? And in satellite imaging, we just don't have the data because the satellite is not in orbit. So to actually design the algorithm, we need to simulate some things. And there's, for instance, a nice route in the state-of-the-art called a digital twin, where we, based on the information about the sensor, about the real entity, we could simulate the data. And then we need to design the process to verify if it could work. And there are lots of traps in real-life applications where we just need to ensure that the data split is correct, that we always verify over the holdout data, where we do not have any information leakage across training tests if we do supervised learning. But also the distribution of the data might change in time, for instance. Right? So if we have satellite, it captures data. It might happen that some component would change, and then we would have totally different distribution of data. And in this case, we might, on the one hand, say that we want to forget what we already learned and try to relearn or adapt the model. But on the other hand, it might happen that we just do not want to forget because this knowledge might be useful. So designing the entire process of generating the data, splitting the data, understanding what kind of metrics are used for verifying that, and then doing experiments that are reproducible, that are easy to interpret, and then they should be comparable with each other, is key to understand what could be the value brought by AI. Because otherwise we might think that this is groundbreaking, but in practice it would fail totally because we, for instance, verified it incorrectly.
So from what you're saying, it's not about having separate metrics for AI, but rather making AI part of the solution, and the metrics are related to the problem.
So AI is, it's a tool, right? So we if we have a problem, we might use AI as a tool, but we need to understand this tool and how to verify this tool. Yeah. And this verification is not only functional. In practice, it might happen that you just need something which is super fast, and it should infer quickly. Or it should take, not a lot of energy because we are at the edge device, which is super limited. And those aspects that are non-functional might be critical, because if you do not meet them, you will not be able to even deploy it in the wild, right? So on board the satellite or in a hospital, if you need a real-time response to some analysis of, let's say, MRI image.
Yeah, and another key fundament of making AI successful is definitely data. So maybe Basia, you can tell us, how to deal with that, how to ensure that we have enough data and the quality is good.
Yeah, it's a great question. Everyone always asks, do we have enough data, right? So yeah, definitely data is fundamental. So if we do have rubbish in our data, we'll have rubbish in the model. In my experience, data was, because previously I worked at Synerise, so we did behavioral modeling. So we did basically predictions on what the customers of given e-commerce or a bank will do in the future. So the basis of our data was to have as many transactions as possible. And it was extremely crucial that they be from the whole year, for example, so that you get holidays, you get Christmas, you get Easter break, whatever. So you get like the whole picture of your problem, at least 1 year. And also what was incredibly important was the business insights from the business team. So not only the raw data, but also the features that they could create. And again, this is the problem between the cooperation between business and data science. So not all data that we were using was in the data itself. Some was in the heads of the business experts as well. Now, maybe Marvi, you can tell us more about textual data. If I can also maybe start the topic, I know that right now textual data is like a whole sort of problem. We could have a separate panel about textual data for sure. So yeah, so maybe the last thing that I will add is that in my current company at Insight, we also try to stick to real world with data. Actually, this company is an experiment, so we try to model the way how you should approach company management with AI. So we started this whole company with AI, and we're trying to automate as many procedures as possible with AI. So again, we're gathering real data about ourselves. So this is the simplest thing that we could do as a startup, just we have our own data, which is high quality because it's real. And the task is to be our own zero customers as well. So when we see that it works for us, we just go and offer this to outside world. And this probably brings us closer to reality so that we do not get lost in dreams.
Yes, I can add to this generating the data. First of all, I think that any kind of AI or ML application starts with descriptive analytics. I think like 10 years ago, data mining and all that was all the rage, and no one really talks about that anymore. But you can avoid building a stupid thing if you just do this basic sanity analytics first. Like, it's not sexy and no one really wants to do it. Everyone just immediately wants to apply some kind of algorithm, and this is often forgotten. But if things go live, these things definitely matter. And going into textual data, this is interesting because anyone who can read can understand. And anyone, if you go and predict something, it's very easy to argue back that this is not correct. And another story there was 10 years ago when bots first started to appear, all the rage was that agents will disappear. We don't need them anymore. Guess what? They didn't disappear. There's more agents being employed all the time till now. And now a second wave has come that now that we have Gen AI, definitely now human agents will disappear. Yes, some of them will, but where they will is this tedious, boring, mundane jobs that are not fit for humans anyway. I have a use case where we were trying to build a chatbot in a Finnish bank, and then the assumption was, without looking at the data, that people come and ask questions what are in the FAQ. And if you actually look at that, that is not true. So looking into the data, spending more time into the data than actually building the model can get you like faster to your working live application.
I think it's a good segue to answer one of the questions from the dashboards. So currently the most voted question is, when do you think AI will replace developers? At least it was a minute ago. So I guess this question will never get bored. And my comment would be that the job of software developer will take another software developer that knows how to use AI, right? But for now, at least. We have also the multi-agent tools right now, like Crew AI or LangChain, which I saw at least for presentation at this conference. So I think we're good for now until the AGI will come. So we'll see. For a few years, we are safe. Any comments on that, or should we move on?
Since I have a mic, I can comment. It will replace once people can define adequately what they want this thing to do, then it will replace.
That will never happen. Yeah.
Okay, I would really love to add to the previous answers on evaluation and actually making AI applications successful in production. So from my perspective, obviously I'm fortunate to work in a company that happens to have a lot of data and a lot of interactions with clients. So most of the time we just can develop products with AI components, doing a lot of A/B testing and evaluating obviously first on offline metrics, and then moving to production and looking at the results, at metrics that we want to see correlation against the offline metrics that we are optimizing in the first place. But this is not always the case. And the point that I would like to make is that I think that data annotation is super important. And data annotation is not just about creating data sets to train models, to reflect the kind of mechanics or knowledge that we want to encapsulate in models. But data annotation is super useful in evaluation, especially for Gen AI. I think that it's the only part going away with Gen AI applications is the modeling part. But then the evaluation is going to be exactly the same, and there's going to be even more reliance on data annotation. And for example, at Allegro, we also develop machine translation models. We are actually moving abroad, expanding internationally. And at some point, we just noticed that first, machine translation at volumes is super expensive. Second, we don't see the good performance out of the models that are available on the market, at least in our language domain. And actually employing external vendors to do data annotation for us was super crucial to first understand the level of quality and also to get buying from business stakeholders that we actually can make a better system compared to the big names, right? Yep, data annotation, super important.
Perfect, great point. So, Kuba, anything to add?
Just one thing to add on this,
yeah,
because maybe from a bit different perspective from medical world, we know that the world is not labeled, right? So we need to somehow generate the ground truth. And the problem is when we have the ground truth, which might not be that obvious, right? So if we have an image and if we have a brain tumor, it might happen and it will happen that people would disagree. Even if we have radiologists with 20 years of experience, then I'm pretty positive they would disagree with each other, and the same person likely would disagree with the same person in a different day. And there are some domains where gold standards not necessarily exist, but still we can try to quantify the quality of ground truth, and we could use it for training, obviously. Very important for validation and verification to extract metrics, because we are sort of bounded by the quality of the ground truth. But also we could perhaps use the confidence of the ground truth to train better models, because we might inject this information into the system to maybe focus on the ground truth bits which are of higher quality or are more confident. And this is, it is possible to sort of exploit this knowledge during the training process to reflect those certain examples as more important. So yeah, agree that annotations are super important. We cannot detach from the domain, because otherwise it will fail in some domains like medical world, satellite. images are not necessarily obvious. And this cooperation across different fields like radiologists, software developers, AI researchers, it must go hand in hand to build models that could work.
Just two more sentences, because you brought a very specific thing to my mind. It's quite hard to create annotation instructions so that you would have consistent annotations across multiple annotators, and it's a hard job. And there's people that actually specialize in that. And at Allegro, we hire a few such people, and it's super valuable because they not only need to understand a bit about machine learning and working with external and internal annotators, but they also need to understand the business very well and product managers, business stakeholders, because what they need to do is extract knowledge about the business problem that needs to be modeled. And many times, business stakeholders don't have a clue what they want to model.
I have an anecdotal story about that. I was working in a startup where we were building a model to sort emails in a Finnish bank. And we actually used the people in the bank, experts, to categorize based on criticality into 4 categories. And what happened was that the agreement was 23%. So before this critical, let's try it out if this thing actually works, I spent weekend relabeling because there was so much confusion in these labels. So yeah, scary business.
Yeah, I actually had a pretty similar story. Again, from the medical world, we had the entire flowchart of the process to annotate data. And it was an iterative process. So we had 2 experts, 20 years of experience, and we had younger radiologists still after a couple of years of experience, but the experts had to agree on the quality of annotations, and it took some time to find this point where the experts do agree, because otherwise they would have to reject the annotation, get back to the previous step, and reiterate. And on top of that, thanks to this kind of process, we could also have this confidence quantified, because we might either have the mean opinion score across experts, or we might have the confidence of every single annotator in the process. So both are important, because we may imagine that younger people would be annotating some things in a bit more detail because they are just focusing on this task, and some people that are more experienced might be more frivolous in annotating. It would not be that detailed, still okay, but a bit different category of annotation.
Great points, great points. So let's move to another category, money. So currently we're all building AI solutions. It's really tough to forecast how much money would we need even for the resources. I guess the obvious takeaway would be that currently we can use the small language models for local development. I've seen at least a few presentations on this conference about this, but can you also help our attendees today to say like how to forecast AI solutions when it comes to using LLMs? How do you do that at your companies?
So you mean predicting the cost of building the models themselves,
yes.
Right? So for us, we try to start with whenever you use LLMs, because it's not always the case. Let's remember that LLMs are not all that is out there. So at Synerise, for example, there was not really a lot of use for LLMs because let's remember that they don't solve this problem of recommendations, propensity prediction, and churn in an optimal way. That was our takeaway. So we didn't care about them that much because we just found out that they are not always the perfect solution. Although I know that some people do recommendations with LLMs and they like put this whole question to an LLM saying, I have this customer, Tomasz, and this is his history. Tell me what he will want to buy. This is very slow, extremely slow. It cannot work in production. I actually had one customer who begged us to build something else because he deployed something like this in a bank, and it couldn't be used in production at all. It answered like 2 requests per minute or so. So what we did was another kind of models, and we actually created the models ourselves. I mean, the technology, the algorithms were created in-house. So what was costly was our salary, actually, because we invested a lot into building this. It was hard, but then we had everything at ourselves. So we had we had the technology for ourselves. So this is also an option. I wouldn't bet that you cannot do the same thing even right now with LLMs. So, but if LLMs are the optimal way, you can invest a bit and make a distilled version of a large LLM, for example. So if you have some funding, you can use an available API, just make it annotate some data, and then train a much smaller model on this, and this smaller model might fit your needs perfectly. Then, if you do not have this sort of starting money, you can use an API, and this is also my experience. It was confirmed by one of the creators of Bielik, the Polish model from Speaklish, and we are of the opinion that prompting can solve most of your problems if you do your prompts well. So if you match the instruction format, if the model was like fine-tuned on instructions, or if you use the right prompt for a general purpose chatting model, then you might find that you don't need fine-tuning at all. So this would be the first option I would try. Probably it could be the cheapest, since with APIs like Grok, for example, with a Q at the end, not K, the prices are falling, speed is going up. You do not have to use OpenAI, you can use something else, and it will be faster too. So please start with, maybe consider your own approach if it doesn't explicitly need LLMs. And if you do use LLMs, just start with prompting. Do not train if you don't have to.
I guess that's a really good segue also to reusability, because it's also a really good way to cut some money. So I guess we have portals like Hugging Face.
I can maybe give one more example, because recently I worked on an SQL LLM, so an LLM which would transform queries from text to SQL, and then return an answer from a database. And what I saw in a company that we worked for previously, it was that they did not input the schema of their database into the prompt. So they were asking the LLM to just answer the question, like, give me the customers who had 5 transactions last year, with the LLMs which had no idea about the schema. So this could give you an example of, well, maybe your LLMs cannot answer your question. If it doesn't, maybe the information is lacking in the prompt.
I'm really interested how reusability works at Allegro. So previously, before AI, I've worked with companies like Adidas, and they, for example, unified the tech stack so they could move people between projects. It was like, super extra easy. So wanted to ask you, Jurek, how do you deal with reusing the resources, plus also reusing the people skills, like, building centralized teams or distributing that knowledge?
A lot of topics.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go one by one, and then we can kind of dissect the question again. So first, reusability of models. So it's quite obvious to anybody working in that field that you don't get to train models from scratch too often. It's usually just grabbing some fine-tuned backbone. The same is happening in vision, the same is happening in text, even outside of LLMs, obviously. The thing that worked for the past, I guess, 6 years, it was 2018 when BERT was released. I guess it was 2018. It's the thing that you always have some kind of backbone, and then you fine-tune that for your specific use case. And that's exactly what we are doing at Allegro. We are the first to create BERT trained specifically for Polish, and then we also created a benchmark to benchmark language models on Polish on a set of tasks, and we released those models open source, so you could download them from Hugging Face. And it was a while ago. Obviously, internally, we are creating models which are fine-tuned for specific use cases. So, for example, we have textual models which are fine-tuned for email communication with customers. That's what we use in our customer service automation models. But we also have, for example, models which are dedicated to product data, because understanding all of the specifics of product world is probably something different than understanding the general domain of language. So that's what we do, and that's the standard approach. In some cases, we need to train from scratch. For example, ranking models, that's something that we do train from scratch. But there's not that many examples of that. One more thing that I would add is that fine-tuning of LLMs seems to make sense from our experiments that we've done. It's quite easy, and sort of linking back to the question about costs, it seems to be doable to fine-tune open source smaller LLMs on data which is specific to your domain, and then use that model in exactly the same way that you'd use a larger model, which is served by an API, and get a similar kind of performance. So I won't be talking about specific names, or specific models, but basically that's the kind of mechanics that we observed. And then there was the second part of the question.
About building internal competences and creating teams around it. Is it
Yes,
central?
sure.
Is it distributed?
Sure. So looking at the history, at the very beginning, we just needed a central team. And we chose to focus on specialists in the area that seemed to have the greatest chance of massive ROI. And it happened to be information retrieval, so anything connected to search and recommendations. And we had quite a few success stories in that field, which helped to grow the team. So we grew the team, which by the way is internally called machine learning research, to around 40 researchers, and then there's people who specialize in data annotation, some data engineering. Also, we are operating within data and AI department with the data platform, so it helps quite a lot. But then obviously you cannot do everything within the central team, and there's always better understanding of business challenges within the product teams, and in a lot of problems you don't actually need researchers, as long as you can have the right talent to consult. It might be actually quite doable to solve real world business challenges within product teams which don't have super advanced, super specialized researchers. Data scientists usually can solve quite a lot of issues themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good pattern to have like a centralized consulting team and embrace that knowledge across the whole organization.
And the center of innovation as well.
Yeah.
Probably you would not expect translation models beating big names being trained, if not researchers. So for some use cases, you need researchers.
Yeah. Okay, maybe time for the most popular question for now. What was the worst AI integration that you have seen?
Is it still me?
Anyone who has the best answer, I guess.
Choose, I guess.
So the dumbest one that I've heard was in Just Eat Takeaway, but not in Poland. They've built a chatbot to ask where you can order hamburger, which is like basically the search engine. So it really didn't make sense.
I like this story now with these LLMs that people try to use them everywhere they can, and then they use large language model to do sentiment analysis. I think this is completely idiotic. shouldn't be used for that. It's like you have a Ferrari and then you use it to go to the grocery store. So yeah, stop doing that.
I saw one attempt at integration, but finally I think it was not deployed, but the customer was very annoyed that it didn't work in tests, and they wanted to create a strategy for their company using ChatGPT. So they wanted to, ChatGPT, they wanted to advise what to do next in their situation. And they were complaining that the answers were very general, like they are so general, like it's nothing new. And they had this idea in mind that AI is a genius that will devise something that people cannot. While in reality, well, ChatGPT will just give you a generalized answer, right? So something very, very average, like an average above over all solutions. And they felt tricked actually by whoever told them is going to work like that. And it was not deployed, fortunately. But it was the worst, I think.
I think the most annoying thing is CEOs of Polish companies being sure that generative AI will help you with anything. This would be the type of Janusz, CEO, right? Just use ChatGPT and you're done.
Actually, not only Janusz. Yeah. I remember I talked to a CEO of an extremely big American company. They are building like oil platforms, things like that. They are extremely big. I won't name them. And it was the first days after the release of ChatGPT, and the CEO said that ChatGPT is creating better strategies for him than his own team. So this one actually was satisfied with what ChatGPT provided. I'm sure that he got disillusioned later, but it was the first days.
I can add that I've also met content writers that are definitely worse than ChatGPT, but I don't think it's the problem of the ChatGPT, it's that the content writers are bad, so it's a sad thing.
Yes. Okay, another question. Can we replace management people with AI? That's really interesting because I work in the management, so I think that it's a complex question because for now AI is able to automate only partial things. So with agents, maybe we'll be able to do more.
I think it definitely can be done. You just have to say that, yeah, this is an interesting thing. We have to prioritize, and let's circle back and all these kind of things.
At least we can, to a certain extent, increase the productivity. Just think of, end-year review. How many feedbacks do you need to write?
Oh yeah, I use that ChatGPT to write performance reviews. For my team, I used it as such, and for others, I said, be negative.
Nice. So did you learn language model to speak as you, and the language model is dialing into the call, or not yet?
We use all sorts of language models in Klaus. We've tried Google's FLAN-T5s. We fine-tuned one of them for one use case, and we use Palm 2, but this is just like we wanted to try. Yeah. And obviously OpenAI, and when it coming back to the money thing, we are operating at the rate right now that would get this just spending on the OpenAI to 1 million by the end of this year. So we've seen that one way how to cut cost is cut the evaluations. So if you think in a contact center, we want to ask opinion about, I don't know, chat email, something like that. And you can drastically reduce the load by just doing some sanity filtering before. Like, if you see that there is no meaningful dialogue, no meaningful content, don't ask. And now when these generative chatbots are turning up everywhere, and they're proactive, you can reduce load by doing some sanity filtering before.
I also wanted to add that at Insight, we are currently running this experiment, as I already mentioned, where we built the company, we registered it a month ago, and from day one, we are automating everything we can so that we can build little products around every company managed function that we can. Obviously, AI is not making our decisions about the strategy. We're just making all these tiring little assignments easier for us and information easier to find. So actually, I'm very curious about the outcome of this experiment, whether we could, because we'll be reporting about how this goes. And I'm wondering if we could at some point say that, well, at this point, we would be hiring someone, a manager maybe, because this company is fully operational and it's just run partially by AI. We would be hiring a manager, but we don't have to, because there is an AI for that. But this is, it's been a month, so not that long time has passed, and I'm not able to give this information. But I invite everyone to follow us, so we'll be reporting on how it goes, and whether a manager was indeed not necessary.
And looking at the situation and the tools, I think Scrum Masters would be first to be maybe not replaced, but we would need list of them. So one Scrum Master with AI tools would probably be able to gather 10 people right now, 10 roles. Another great question. So we mentioned that to build a great AI solution, we need to have a great use case. So we have a question: do we really need to use AI, or is just we have to because it's a hype? I think that this question is only valid for very edgy use cases, like you're a startup, you want to get some funding, so if you put AI acronym, then you probably have 10 more points in order to get that funding. But overall, it's not the right question, because I think that AI is the only tool which can help us, and as I mentioned at the beginning, the best use case how to use AI is already in your backlog. It's just a way of fixing the problem that you have with the better or quicker result, right?
Yeah, I'll just add, you have pretty specific products that you're developing, and you probably know which are your KPIs, what is the objective. You have some UX research, and as you see specific applications of AI, you just implement and measure, and then you see if it works or not. And I wouldn't be able to run a team as I do and get the funding for it if not a very specific set of success stories, and success stories measured in hard monetary KPIs. So yeah, I just cannot say more. Basically, it's not a hype. It's just a tool, and I could count tens and tens of successful applications over the past 7 years.
Yeah, definitely. This is just a tool, like Kuba said in the very beginning also. And I would say, whenever possible, don't do ML, don't do AI. Having done mathematical modeling for a decade, you can do a shit ton of things without applying any machine learning. And that is scalable, cheap to run, gets the job done. So do whatever you have to do to get the job done if you have the right use case.
Good way about thinking about it is just treating AI as another wave of technology, like we've had cloud or web/internet. So it's just another wave.
I mean, it definitely can do things that couldn't be done before.
In a way, it's magic, but it isn't. It's very capable technology. Yeah, and
maybe one small remark. I saw customers while working at Synerise who had great systems which were built on domain knowledge, and they were very hard to beat by AI. So domain knowledge, business intelligence, and they were extremely happy. So you don't have to do AI. Yeah.
Also, maybe I could ask a question. What would be the value brought by AI if we have some classic algorithms? Like for image, it might be thresholding. So if we can do things with thresholding, why to deploy AI? If we see that there is a clear value in terms of the accuracy or the functional characteristics of the algorithm, it's fine. It might be faster compared to some, very difficult algorithms that are classic. So this might be another viewpoint from which we could look at AI, where we, benefit from AI. It is just a tool. We need to use this tool in an appropriate way, and we need to understand why we want to use this tool as well.
And by the way, we're coming close to the end of the session, so we will still stay here for at least 10 minutes just to answer some of the questions from the dashboard. But maybe if you want to get a coffee, I wanted to close this panel with a question: what's coming for AI? So I guess this year will be all about automation, having smaller models so that it's more easily accessible, using agents. Do you have any other ideas what will be, coming with AI technology in next 6 months? Kuba, you're the research guy. Help us here.
This is a huge question because
it is.
We at least should look at this from two perspectives: from industrial perspective and from scientific perspective. And what we could observe, for instance, in Earth observation, is to benefit from all the data that we could capture. And this is not just image; it might be image, textual data, maybe radar data. So we are trying to consolidate all the knowledge that is somewhere in different data modalities to bring some value to the end users. And even those applications might not be known at the moment, we know that the technology that we built could be deployed pretty quickly and easily to emerging use cases. And for instance, in Earth observation, this is a big question. What kind of use case might appear in 2 weeks, for instance, and we should be able to tackle this kind of use case quickly and efficiently. So on the one hand, better models were better mean a lot of things like multimodal, higher capacity, generalizing of unseen data and all stuff. On the other hand, interesting use cases which have never been solved previously using any kind of algorithm.
Yeah. Any other insights?
So I think there will be this trend of discovering better model architectures, because it doesn't make sense that we should be needing so much data as we now need to have a ChatGPT 4.0. Because for people, a lot less data is needed to train us to do legit reasoning. So a lot of effort will be put in there. Another part of another hard problem that will be surely attempted is movement of the machines, because it's still it's funny because we always thought that is the easiest one, right? We thought that creativity, that fluency in language is the hardest, but the simplest motor skills are indeed the hardest. So these things will surely be somehow developed if it's in our capability, intellectual capability. I think that on the market there will be a shift towards building products as opposed to building services. So we'll be having specialized models which are more and more closed, which are solving very small problems. So for me, this is the reality of our future.
Makes sense. There is a huge risk that with every new model released by by OpenAI, those products would become useless.
Yeah.
So it's funny to observe, right? So with that, I wanted to thank you, our guests. So maybe right now, as unofficial part, let's answer some of the questions. How dangerous is deepfake, and is any idea how to protect people for that?
It is dangerous.
Yeah.
I know because I have a friend who's working in the border guarding system or these things, and I don't do it personally myself, but yeah, it is dangerous. Don't do it.
I didn't really get that question fully because there was quite a bit of noise. So, if you could repeat the question again, that would help.
How dangerous is deepfake, and how we can protect from that?
Well, I'm not an expert, and I don't have stats on deepfakes, but it's certainly one of the biggest threats that is widely recognized in terms of impact on society, because it might have a tremendous impact on the political scene, for example. So I would say that this is definitely one of the top risks. And it's not the imaginary risk, it's actually out there and it's being used. So I'm sure that companies that do any kind of media publishing or social nets, obviously, these are investing heavily into counteracting that.
Yeah. Probably we'll need to think of some way of certifying videos or public speeches, how to distract those
Yeah,
from
I
the
think
real
it's
ones.
already in the AI Act, or will be there. There will or is already a requirement to put a seal on your content, which says that it's AI generated or not.
Nice idea. There was a really good question about if we train a model, it's working, but then the data that we've used for training that model is becoming not that actual. So we need to retrain the model. So how to keep up with this? Do you have any tips?
I actually have a first tip for that. This is an example where maybe you have not picked your use case very well. Like if it takes a long time to retrain a model and you know that this is not constant, it will likely change faster, then maybe don't do that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So I would add that there's use cases that actually in these use cases it's a typical thing that model goes out of date because there's like ongoing distribution shift, and for that you basically need to measure that. So you have some baseline and you look at the gradation metrics in online fashion, and then you basically retrain, or you can have some arbitrary cadence at which you retrain a model, and well, it just works. We've been doing that for a long time. Or you might try to look for some cycles, trends, and try to encapsulate all of the behavior in a model that is actually capable of modeling these trends and cycles. So then you would probably not need to retrain as often, or you can contextualize your model. So include all of the features that might be descriptive in terms of that distribution shift behavior. So yeah.
And there's a really good segue to another question. So a good use case in this topic would be building a internal knowledge base. So doing a RAG model and introducing there some documentation, internal organization knowledge. So then this grows over time. So how to evaluate if this RAG model is returning the right result? Do you have any tips on what metrics could be used, how to evaluate that, other than human eye? Tough question, right?
I can just tell that there's ongoing research on that, basically using models to evaluate models. I'm not really up to date with that research. I know that some of the results are being implemented in existing cloud solutions. So recently on Google Next, there was an introduction of a mechanism to evaluate models automatically, and there's specific metrics being developed. I don't know the details, so I can just point out that there's work being done on that. But as of now, we just stick to data annotation.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. It's really tough to say how to measure LLMs.
Actually, about RAG, there's ongoing work also. Or I've seen some examples where different kind of knowledge bases are constructed specifically for this RAG use case that include sometimes like hidden metadata that can help in the performance.
Oh, nice. So we're actually injecting the data with this cause in mind that we want to verify it. Yeah, it's really smart. Nice.
Yeah, so from what I know, all kinds of companies struggle with getting feedback on their system. So usually they try to deploy some sort of like a hands up, hands down system for the users within the companies. But from my experience, it's just that. So there is not really a lot of interesting ideas regarding how to measure the satisfaction of the users and how can they really tell us in a way that could be processed fast, in a fast way, without making them write summaries or whatever, to make them give feedback. I think there is a lot of missing pieces in this process. So a good place to maybe find a new product.
Yeah, that's also true. Customer satisfaction is a great feedback. We can introduce automation and testing, but this is the most important part. Very deep question. Any advices how to adapt to new upcoming AI reality? I guess being enthusiastic about the change and trying to embrace it yourself, right?
We can trust our regulators. So I encourage you to read AI Act. There is like a few hundred pages of first attempt to do this.
Did you read it?
I'm actually in the process of reading it because I find some very suspicious things in there, which do not make me very optimistic about the quality of the whole thing, to be honest. And again, I can tell you that we are starting a think tank, which will do exactly that and analyze AI Act. Right now, I think it's a good first, it's a good that they tried, but there is a lot of danger in the regulations themselves. So right now, I'm not very happy about what's happening.
It's an off topic, but I recently learned that there's startups popping up that specialize strictly in helping to comply with regulations which are upcoming. And in the EU, it's quite obvious, it's AI Act, but it seems that China is actually leading as well, and it might seem strange, but basically China wants to keep AI their way. So that's why they are also looking at the regulations. And there's some ISO standards as well, which you might choose to comply with. So basically, there's quite a bit of tooling and AI governance tooling that might be required, and some companies are starting to provide that tooling. And obviously, it will also help to offload all of the burden connected to keeping up with the regulations. So if you're looking into founding a startup and you have some friends that are knowledgeable in legal stuff, maybe that's a good idea.
I see from my side, since the launch of GPT and people putting this in the product, that now any kind of machine learning solution gets the same questions, like how do you put, like what do you do there? How do you train it? Even though it's like, can it hallucinate? No, it cannot hallucinate. It's a supervised model. It will never hallucinate. So, and I'm also in talks with the legal, and I'm super afraid of actually ever fine-tuning anything, because I've answered these questions, like how do you validate that nothing ever gets there? How do you reduce bias? What processes you have in place to ensure that? And at some point it becomes such a big legal burden for the company that it's just not worth it. Then on top of that, the EU AI Act that prohibits use of biometric data. There's what you can do in the workplace, how can you use inference there, that's limiting a lot. So I've seen already that some product features might not be built because the legal implications are just so dangerous.
Yeah, also there are domains where you just need to comply with some regulations, like in medical. If you want to hit the market with your medical device, you need to have the certificate, like C in Europe or FDA in the States. So you just need to comply with some regulations, and you need to prove that you built your solution in the correct way. Having appropriate methodology, good data, acquired in the correct way, annotated in the correct way, etc.
That's actually tricky, because if you create a model and train it, then using another patient to train the model, it's different model. So you need to certify it again, right? So
exactly. Yeah. It's like that in medicine. Maybe you can confirm that you must certify every version of your model. Yeah. And right now in medical devices, there is this case in Poland that the institutions which can give the certifications, they are blocked. So they have too many requests, and you cannot bring anything new to the market. So yeah, so basically they are not happening right now.
That's the best use case to show how compliance is blocking the actual usage. You want to do some good and you're blocked because you're seeing that your model can be improved, but you actually cannot do that.
Yeah. Also, we may have this set of specialized models, as it was actually mentioned, that we might have models that specialize in for instance, one population. They might be used for this population, and when you want to deploy it to other population, you need to retrain, perhaps go through the certification once again, and the previous product would not be touched.
We're 6 minutes away from the next presentation, so the last question will be what's after AI, when we will master AI, what's coming next after that, what research will come. So I think that AI will just become a commodity, right? Every previous technology, so we'll have all of those roles, those things would be on productions. We'll have further automation. Any ideas from your side?
Shouldn't we ask AI this question?
I have a single word answer: singularity.
I don't think we will get the AGI anytime soon, to be honest. I think that we'll get many specialized AIs per task. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even now with multi-model agents, we can see a lot of demos, products working really great, but then if you start using that, it's not that great. So we still need a lot of time to actually make it work. But you know, what does it mean? We have a lot of time. With AI, we don't know, right? Is it 3 years, 6 months? We'll see. Okay, and with that, we will close. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.